So I'm just scrolling through Twitter the other night, probably long after when I should have been in bed, and I see one of you has bumped a post from May. And it was from a segment that we did in May. And I said, what is this? This dates a long time ago. I don't even remember saying this. Well, where were you on May 21st? Because I'll tell you what we were apparently doing on this show. We were talking about Dan Mullen and we were talking about Kirby Smart. And if you're listening on podcast right now, thank you. One of the top 10 football podcasts in the world as of this week. Thank you. But if you're listening, let me read for you what the viewers on YouTube are seeing. This is called a quote edit. Ted Hyman pumps out like 100 of them a day over here at 24/7. Does a really good job. Well, this is the one he pumped out of what I thought was a throwaway line. I thought nothing of saying this on Late Kick. And what I said was, quote, there are some Florida fans who would trade Dan Mullen for Kirby Smart. There ain't a Georgia fan walking the planet who would trade Kirby Smart for Dan Mullen. So innocuous. And you know how rarely I use that word. It's so innocent. That's common sense. That was like me saying, I think the sun's going to rise at 6:52 a.m. It's just a fact. There's no Georgia fan in his or her right mind that would trade Dan Mullen for Kirby Smart. I knew Florida fans. I was quoting unnamed Florida fans who had told me they would trade Dan Mullen for Kirby Smart. So this, I thought nothing of saying. Well, I said it. And then our graphics and editing department did what they do. And then this went out over the interweb. And then all of a sudden, we were viral. And this is not the period of time that you really want to say such a word, but we were viral in the best of ways or worst of ways, depending on your perspective. So this goes out. And that's all well and good. You know, people tweet out stuff every day. Well, we got some replies under this, both on the 24/7 account and my account. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important because things have totally gone off the rails at Florida, and Georgia's ranked #1 in the country. I don't know that either result is the biggest shocker in the history of college football, but here we are. And so one of you had a lot of free time on your hands the other night, and you bumped this post. Well, here's what happens for those unfamiliar with the platform. When you bump a post, I also get to see all the replies underneath. And that's where the fun began. So I started scrolling through the replies, and I said 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, 50. Wow, this will make a good segment on the show. Some of these people have lost their minds by thinking I had lost my mind. Allow me to share. Because it wouldn't be professional of me, would it, if I didn't give you guys credit for your responses. I want to acknowledge the audience at every turn. So let's acknowledge some of our esteemed audience members. And when I say audience members, I mean people who would never be watching the show. They just kind of drove by the tweet, they threw out their response, and then they moved on. We had the following. I'm just going to read them and react, and you can react along with me. I trust Mullen to win a really big game well before Kirby Smart. Problem is not necessarily the big game, friends. The problem is when you're favored by double digits against the likes of LSU. We continue. Mullen will be at Florida longer than Smart is at UGA, which is only true in the world where Kirby Smart takes an NFL job at this point. We continue again. What part of Florida beating Georgia in 2020 did you miss? I didn't miss it. I didn't miss it at all. I think the statement stood on its own regardless of the results last year. That was kind of the premise behind saying it. Even if, or even after, Florida has won the East, you had people that were openly just accepting the fact that the team that just won that division is still the second best program in the division. Not team, program in the division. Because the critical factors and the characteristics that you look at to define a program over a team have not really elevated all that much. I see Kyle Trask, he's good. Where's he going? Who's replacing him? I see Kyle Pitts, he's good. Where's he going? Who's replacing him? A lot of question marks in those blanks, as it turns out. Let's just roll on here, because it gets better and better. Give it a couple of years, they say, until Mark Richt 2.0 has made himself apparent in the form of Kirby Smart. Smart is underachieving given the talent he has recruited. Well, I'm looking at the record right now. And this is as big a goose egg in the loss column as I have seen. Now, of course, this mentality would lead you to believe that if Kirby Smart goes undefeated regular season and they make it to the national championship game and they lose by 3, that means he's underachieved, which of course is insanity. But that kind of mentality, you know, someone, in other words, who's misguided enough to say this is certainly misguided enough to think that. Here's one of my personal favorites. You just be saying, just to say it. That's our in-house editing. That's how we censor things around here. Now, I am partially guilty of that, but not in this particular case. What are you smoking? Can I get some of that? Because It's some primo stuff. Colin, do you know my deal? You know my supplier? Because I don't. I have no clue whomst he or she is. We continue. Who in their right mind has said this? Your own fan base. That's who I was quoting, friend. LOL, STFU. Acronyms aplenty in this one. There are no Florida fans who want Smart over Mullen. Hashtag false. Because you're a moron, and morons don't know much about football, Josh Pate, you are exactly what's wrong with the current state of media. I am the enemy in Gainesville because I'm the one who didn't have you ready 2 years in a row to play LSU. Is there a coach who is as bad as Kirby Smart but gets as much love as he does from freaks like Josh? I actually am not seeing this for the first time until now. Let me regroup here. Colin, when's the last time I got called a freak? And this has several connotations. And to be honest, I don't fit any of them. So let's reread this. Let's re-rack it, as they say in the biz. Is there a coach who is as bad as Kirby Smart but gets as much love as he does from freaks like Josh in the recruiting industry that have no idea about actual football? Probably not. If this is actual football, if this is what we're calling actual football, where's the fake football? Like, where's the fake version? Because this is actual football. So actual football would lead me to believe that I'm wrong on this, so I'm living in the fake world. What is it like in the world of actual football? What is that like? Is it like this? Is it like, you toss a shoe, you get upset, you don't live and learn, you go get beat by Kentucky despite the fact that they can't put 100 total on the board on you through the air, and then you don't learn from that either, actual football, and then you go to Baton Rouge and they splatter you. I mean, let me refresh your memory. You got the worst rushing offense in Power 5 football. Chunk, 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 chunk. Track marks all over your face. Is that real football? Is that actual football? If so, I'm not playing favorites here. I'll hang out with Kirby Smart in the fake football world because that's the last place I want to be, is watching LSU hang nearly half 100 on me as the head coach is on the way out the door anyway. These are just some of the many quotes that I had that I got the pleasure at this point of scrolling through the other night. And to be honest with you, I was not going to do this segment, but I had a lot of encouragement from certain message boards out there. Then I saw this. So that was only part of the fun I wanted to have. So then I'm on that same platform that really does nothing but get me in trouble. And I saw something out of Jacksonville yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, as we sit here and talk live Thursday. And I can't remember what radio station it was down there. But it's not necessarily important because this is not the first time I've seen or heard this sentiment expressed. But the expression essentially was the recruiting expectations are too high at Florida. So here's what's happening. Dan Mullen does not recruit at a high level. That's established. We all get that. Even his defenders do not hail him as some great recruiter. They would merely tell you he'll win on Saturday as long as he's in the ballpark talent-wise. Debatable, but I understand where that comes from. But Dan Mullen's not an elite recruiter, and at least on the outside looking in, it doesn't appear that he's made a ton of aggressive moves to rectify that. Now that's a problem that's separate, but what was said, and this is not an isolated statement, I've heard several people say this, the expectation level's too high, because Florida fans don't like it, nor should they. They will not settle for it, nor should they. I'm right there with them. You got some folks saying, as the University of Florida, you shouldn't be expected to recruit at as high a level as Kirby Smart is at Georgia, which, as we all know, is also asinine. To that, I responded this. What would Kirby Smart do if he were at Florida? If the answer is he would recruit pretty much the same, then your expectation isn't too high, because that means the limiting factor is not your internal resources and your state of being as a program. The limiting factor is the guy currently in the driver's seat and the changes that he is either unable or unwilling to make. Either way, it's a problem. But I looked at that and I said, how in the world would Kirby Smart be any different if he were at Florida? Florida's not the problem. And by the way, have we forgotten what Urban Meyer did at that same university the moment he walked in? Urban Meyer came from Utah. Utah's halfway to Japan, and he came in having no direct correlation to the region. Urban Meyer hadn't been to Florida for anything more than a vacation in his life. He didn't even have ties down here, and he dominated in recruiting. Were the expectations too high? What are we talking about? So then I had someone who, at the very least, backed up their response with logic and data. I had someone come back, and they said, well, I don't know that Kirby Smart would do as good if he was at Florida, because there is a misconception that there's more talent around the University of Florida than there is around Georgia. And then he showed the scatter plot, he showed the data points. And if you're going to disagree with me, but you bring logic-based reasoning to the equation, I will never hate on you. I'll never bash you. I can respectfully disagree with it, and I respectfully disagree with this only because I don't think geography with a cat like Kirby Smart or Nick Saban or Ryan Day is a limiting factor at all. State lines might as well not even exist. Like Kirby Smart's every bit as effective going into Texas as he is going into Kennesaw. That's the nature of a national alpha recruiter. There are only a few of them out there now, but they are the exception to the rule. Kirby Smart's the exception to that rule. Nick Saban is the exception to that rule. So what Kirby Smart would do is he'd go to Florida and he'd destroy it. He'd tear it up, just like he is at Georgia right now. And then as I was scrolling throughout this entire landfill of replies that I had on that tweet, of course you had the usual, well, you know, Kirby is not as good an X's and O's coach as Dan Mullen. Let me suggest something. That can be true. For all I know, that can be true. I know most people think that. A couple of things can be reality here, though. That can be true, and the people saying it also have no earthly way to prove it, no earthly way to diagnose it. And what I've always made this akin to is, like if I were watching a space shuttle and it couldn't get off the launch pad, I could say, those idiots at NASA, they screwed up again. They don't know anything about actual rocket science. And I mean, technically, I guess I'd be right because they were supposed to get the rocket into space and it didn't take off right. But do you know what it would be like if I sat down with one of them? I mean, they wouldn't even get past the instruction manual of the knowledge that exists in their head before I'd have saucers for eyes. And likewise, you could, for all I know, be right when you tell me Dan Mullen's a better X's and O's game day coach. I'm about to tell you why it's irrelevant in a second. But you could be right when you say that. But most of the people that I hear say that to me are wholly inequipped to actually get on a grease board or turn the lights down and get in the film room and take the laser pen and actually diagnose it for me. So usually I dismiss that, even if there's a chance it's true. Here's why I don't really care. I've always thought in this particular comparative analysis of Dan Mullen, Kirby Smart, I've always thought it was kind of misguided. Like I've always thought to myself, if I got an A or a B, a side I'd rather be on in that equation, I'd rather be on the side of Kirby Smart. Like if you're telling me that one guy's a great game day tactician, but the other, he's an all-world recruiter who's also a pretty good coach in his own right, I want to be on the side where the better players are. Because if I put Richard Petty in a station wagon and I put you in the monster truck, guess how much it matters that he's a better driver than you? It really doesn't. This is not chess. This is football. You get to hit people. You get to knock people over. You get to run at people. There is a physical element. When you're consistently bigger and faster and stronger than the other guy, it's not a guaranteed win, but it's absolutely the side I'd rather be on than the alternative where everything has to go right and I got to thread every needle. No thanks. Especially when I'm at Florida, where it shouldn't be that way to begin with. I shouldn't have to thread the needle. I shouldn't have to wring every ounce of liquid out of the sponge. I'm Florida, man. I've had #1 recruiting classes here, and nothing's changed. The expectation isn't too high. The current leadership's not good enough. The current product's not good enough. Let's move on. That game's happening next week. It's not even a Georgia-Florida preview. I fear that the Georgia-Florida preview could go sideways. That's why I wanted to talk about it in a more abstract view tonight.